Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Foltz Fitness Podcast. Before we dive into today's episode, I would like to take a minute just to thank you guys for joining us today. We really appreciate the support, and we hope you're enjoying these episodes that we have been bringing out. It's just me today. Lily is not joining us, so it'll just be me, and I would just like it if you would take some time to go ahead and rate our podcast. If you're enjoying the episodes, it will really help us out and hopefully make us more accessible to other people out there. So if you could, please head over and rate our podcast on whatever platform you are watching us on or listening to us on, rather. So today's episode is going to be filled with some information on what helped me PR my marathon. It's going to break down into 6 key things that helped me shave 16 minutes off of my marathon time. My first road marathon that I ran was in April of 24. It was the Glass City Marathon in Toledo, where I ran 3:26. And then my next road marathon, which I competed in, was the Austin Marathon this past February, and I ran in 3:10. So I just wanted to break down in 6 key things that really helped me get that new PR. The first thing was focused on fueling properly and enough. So this is a common theme now in the endurance world, is that people aren't fueling enough, and there's a lot around fueling. This is something I always claimed to be a priority in my first marathon prep, but in all honesty, I was not really bought into it. I was definitely under fueling, and I believe many runners are under fueled, both in pre-race and racing and in their training just day to day. So during this prep, I was shooting for a little more than 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein, which was usually around 200 grams. I weigh about 175 pounds right now, so I was always hitting at least 175 grams of protein throughout this prep on a daily basis. I then was trying to fill up with carbs, so I was hitting a minimum of 350 grams of carbohydrates per day, and that would kind of change depending on the training I had. My training would change a little bit day to day, which we'll get into a little bit later in this episode. So I was always aiming for at least 350 grams of carbs, but again, that would fluctuate up from there. I always ended up hitting a little over 3,000 calories a day. And again, this was at a bare minimum. So if I had a long run that day, or I had a big speed workout plus some weight room stuff, then obviously those calories would fluctuate up from there. So just making sure I'm getting in enough calories day to day to support the training that I had was really a huge key, and it can be a game changer in your performance, both in your run workouts and in the gym, and just having overall more energy to train. I believe most runners are underfueled because a lot of people's running journey actually start out as a weight loss plan, right? So when I started running, it was because I wanted to just be fitter and healthier, and I wanted to drop some weight off coming out of a season where I had put on some weight. And I was always kind of monitoring what I was eating, making sure I was keeping calories somewhat moderate to low, even when I was running a lot. So I was always a little bit underfueled from the start, just because I was trying to monitor those calories. Sorry, Axel is squeaking and trying to make himself known today. But yeah, so I think most runners are underfueled because a lot of them come from a background of weight loss, and they kind of transition into endurance training, I think. And I think it's the main reason why I think it's the main reason why runners are underfueled. The second thing I want to discuss and talk about that helped me PR my marathon is strength training. So I strength trained the entire prep for Austin up until taper week. In my last marathon prep, I strength trained before and partway through the marathon build. And this was a mistake. I should have definitely been strength training the entire prep. I felt so much stronger in this race, just head to toe, especially in the legs, later parts of the race. Austin is known to be a hilly course. There's lots of rolling hills on it, and I knew going into this prep that I needed to be stronger than I was in the last marathon because I was going to have to tackle these rolling hills late in the race. So my weightlifting plan was not very strict as far as what days I was lifting. My goal was just to get 3 lifts in throughout the week. So I always start my training week on Mondays. So I had to get a lift in. I had to get 3 lifts in Monday through Saturday because Sundays were typically my rest day. So whenever I could fit those in, whenever my schedule allowed, I was fitting in those lifts. And I think that it was just good to program it that way because I could kind of balance it out with the days that I had intense training. So a lot of times my speed workouts would fall on Wednesdays, and then my long run workouts would fall on Saturdays. So then I could kind of formulate my weightlifting plan to support that training rather than hinder me from performing in those run workouts where I really needed to bring the intensity. So generally, I did my leg days on Wednesdays, almost the entirety of the prep. And I did that because I wanted to be fresh Wednesday morning for my speed workouts where I would be pushing pace. And then I wanted to just finish off the legs in the evening with that strength training session. And this allowed me to then have 2 full days of recovery on the legs before I got into my long run workout, which would be on Saturday. And I found that this just worked well for me, and I recovered well with this kind of split. And then I would do a chest, shoulders, and tris, or a classic push workout. And then I would do a back bis, a classic pull workout the other 2 days of the week. And then I would throw my core work in with my legs. So that was kind of how I structured my strength training into this marathon build. And again, the volume was never super crazy high. I just wanted it to support my run training because running was our main focus here. So I just used it as support, and I wanted to cause no harm, but rather use it as a tool to build upon the endurance I was building in my run training. So definitely don't skip out on your strength training if you're in a race build. I don't care if it's a 5K, marathon, ultra marathon, you should be strength training, and you will definitely see the benefits of it on race day if you continue that throughout the entirety of your prep. The third thing I want to talk about is flexibility in your training. It's important to be flexible with your training plan, and this doesn't mean that you make excuses to skip workouts and not put in the work, but rather adjusting and adapting to the conditions of the day or whatever life's throwing at you. I trained a good amount on the treadmill for this race, and that's something I would have never even considered before. However, we had a very snowy and icy winter here in Ohio, and it made running safely outside an issue. And I'd rather be safe than sorry and not slip or pull a hamstring or do something stupid that would hinder my race. So I took those days and just stayed on the treadmill, and I still got some solid work in. And I actually came to liking the treadmill, which I can't believe I'm saying, but I ended up finding out that it could be a great tool for pace and effort control. So if I knew I needed to stay in a certain heart rate zone and I didn't want to run too hard, I could just flip that treadmill on. If I wanted to hit my easy run I knew I wanted to hit it at an 8:45 pace, I could set that thing on 8:45 pace and know I'm hitting that pace, and I can monitor my heart rate still on my watch with my chest drop heart rate monitor, and I can make sure that I'm not pushing the pace or creeping up at all, which sometimes happens in easy runs. If you're a runner, you know what I'm talking about. So it was just a great tool where I could really manage my effort level and keep those easy runs easy when I needed to. And then on the flip side of that, if I needed to run a speed workout on the treadmill, I could set that to the exact pace I wanted to hit, and I didn't have to think about it. I just knew that was the pace I was hitting, and I could just lock in and on that pace and just keep going. So it was definitely a great tool to use throughout this prep, and it's something I never really would have considered before because I always kind of despised the treadmill, even though that's kind of how I got into running in the first place. But yeah, I used it as a tool rather than dreading it, and it worked out really good because there was no way I could safely run outside in some of the conditions we had this winter. Another thing that goes into flexibility is just some days you're not going to have it, right? So you may have to move a speed workout. If there's a really important workout that you got to hit and you wake up, or maybe you didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, whatever it might be, maybe it would be better off if you moved it back a day, or maybe just skipped it for the week and stayed running easy, and you would be benefiting more than trying to fit in those hard effort paces when you know your body is not ready to take that on. And, when you're going through these 12 and 16 week preps, things are never going to go and you're not going to feel good the entire time. It's literally impossible. So being able to adjust and be flexible and change things up when you're just not feeling it, or life throws different things at you, you just need to learn that flexibility is okay, and don't hesitate to adapt and change up those workouts if you need to. Now, I'm not saying to make excuses and not do the work. Like I mentioned earlier, we're still putting in the work. We're not making excuses, but sometimes when life throws us curveballs, we have to adapt and we have to move some things around in our training. Or in this case, we had to spend a lot more time on the treadmill. So that's kind of what it looked like for being flexible. That is a huge part of our training plan. And that's something that I'll definitely take into my future preps, is just learning to adapt on the fly when things are not the way I want them to be. The fourth thing I want to discuss is accepting that no prep is going to be perfect and not getting discouraged about that, because that's completely normal. During a 12 to 16 week block, I will guarantee that you're going to have bad workouts and missed splits. You might get an illness that sidelines you for a few days or even a week. I got sick during this prep, and it was very hard not to get down and discouraged. And it taught me that missing a few days here and there is not going to make you lose all the fitness you've built. So I was out for, it was a very minor sickness. I felt it for a day and a half really hard, and then I kind of got over it and worked through it. But just those few days, I was supposed to be my first 20-mile long run workout, and I wasn't able to get that in, obviously, and I was just having trouble coping with that for a little while, and I just thought that it's gonna set me back a week, but in reality, that's definitely not the case. It takes at least 2 weeks of not training to start losing fitness. So a few days here and there that you miss because of a sickness or maybe an injury. Sometimes you can get, little minor injuries, whether it's shin splints or your Achilles isn't feeling right, or you got some tightness or heaviness in the legs. Those things can happen, and it can be very easy to get discouraged. But taking a few days off because of those things to make sure you are good to go for the future training and we're not doing any damage permanently that's going to affect our race performance is a huge thing that we have to be aware of. So just making sure that we're accepting the fact that when we enter a marathon prep, or any prep for that matter, that it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be road bumps. There's going to be issues that arise, but we have to know that that's part of the training. That's part of the plan, and it's kind of who we become in those moments when we have to make those decisions that makes us build that character, that confidence, and it helps us grow as individuals through that imperfection and through that issue or struggles in those moments. The fifth thing I want to discuss is training faster than marathon pace. Now I'm going to take a pretty deep dive into this, because this is something that I think was the difference maker for me in this marathon and this race performance. I never really trained that much faster than marathon pace in my first marathon build, and I definitely think it was a mistake on my part. So I did a lot of running in that first marathon build for the Glass City Marathon at marathon pace, but I never really dabbled with going much faster than that. And I think that doing it in this prep made me so much more prepared for those later miles in the marathon than I was at Toledo. So you can incorporate mile repeats at 30 to 40 seconds faster than marathon pace, and holding that pace for moderate distances can be a game changer when it comes to endurance. So this is one way that I incorporated that faster running into my plan, and it was definitely a big difference on those speed workout days. I was doing a lot more half-mile repeats at very fast paces, and I was doing some mile repeats at, like I said, 30 to 40 seconds faster than marathon pace. And they are hard workouts to do. I'm not saying that these are easy to do, and they can be taxing, but man, the difference on race day late in the race was just crazy. My legs were so much stronger and so much more conditioned to hit my goal pace late in the race. On top of this, it's also important to do short and fast intervals. So I'm talking track workouts here. These can be a great tool to increase speed and work those higher heart rate zones. And I'm going to give you an example of a track workout that I did during this build. I actually did it a couple different times. So I started off with a mile warm-up. Before you go into any type of speed work, I recommend doing some warm-up. Usually a mile to 2 mile warm-up is ideal. So then I went into 800-meter repeats. So I did 6 800s with a minute 10 rest in between. And I was trying to hit those 800s at a 6:05 pace and trying to finish them around 3 minutes. And I was really happy if I could get under 3 minutes in those. So after I ran those 800s, I took a minute 30 rest, and then I moved into 5 400-meter repeats. So I was trying to hit these 400s at 5:45 minute per mile pace, which would put me right around a minute 30 for the 400. And then I would repeat this 5 times, again with that 70-second rest. After the 400s were over, I moved into some sprints. So I would do 4 100-meter sprints with 100-meter walk recoveries in between each one. This is kind of a controversial topic because some people think the injury risk of sprinting all out and hard can kind of outweigh the benefits that you get from it, but I am a huge advocate for sprints. I think they are a great way to just jack the heart rate up, put out a huge effort through the legs, and just really work. It's funny how sprints are actually working the muscular system a lot more than the cardio system, because if you get done doing a day of sprints, you're probably going to be walking around like you're sore, like you just hit a big leg workout, which is completely normal. But it's just funny how sprinting can have a different kind of effect on your body than just going out and hitting tempo runs does. You can also incorporate faster efforts in your marathon pace long run workouts. So usually about halfway through a prep, instead of doing long, easy runs, we kind of move into long run marathon paced workouts. So you might have something like 2 mile warm up and then 2 times 3 miles at marathon pace with a 1 mile rest in between those. So I'll give you an example of a workout that I did where I incorporated some faster paces within that workout. So I started off, this example is my peak long run before the marathon. So I did a 3 mile warm up, and that was just roughly at an 8:50 pace. And then I went into 4 miles at marathon pace, which my goal time was 3:15 going in. So I was running these 4 miles at 7:25 pace. Then I would go into a half mile recovery, again at that 8:50-ish pace. And then I went into 2 miles at 7:15 pace, which is faster, 10 seconds faster than my marathon pace, followed by a 1 mile recovery at, again, that easy 8:50 pace. And I repeated this segment 2 times. So it was a total of 12 miles of work of marathon pace or faster work within that. And then after I finished that last mile recovery in that block, I went into 1 mile hard effort. So I was basically running not quite as hard as I could, but like a 7 out of 10 on the perceived effort scale. So I think I ended up clocking a 6:44 mile during this workout on that final mile of marathon pace per se or faster. So hitting a 6:44 mile, 19 miles into a speed workout, just built a whole lot of confidence in me that I could definitely hold the pace I needed to for a long time, in this case, a marathon. So working in those faster paces late in a workout like this, I think is just a game changer when it comes to building your endurance, building your confidence, and teaching your tired legs to run at a faster pace than your goal pace. And it will definitely change the game for you when you get into your marathon, because your body will have had that experience running faster than goal pace late in a long run like that. The sixth thing I want to talk about is embracing recovery and rest days. Now, this is something that can be very difficult when you're a very driven person like I am, because I always want to be working towards my goal. But what we have to remember is that recovery and rest is part of training. And a lot of people don't buy into that, and they can burn themselves out and just kind of run themselves into the ground during a training block if they're not utilizing recovery and rest days. This is definitely the hardest thing to do on this list, like I said, because when you're striving for that goal, you just want to be all in on that. But I have found that incorporating one rest day or off day a week is best for me, because it allows my body to soak up the training from the past week and just get recovered for another hard week ahead. So I generally am running 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and almost always my rest day falls on Sunday. And this is just a good thing for mental clarity and just ensuring I'm not getting burnt out or injured. So I definitely take my rest days seriously. I encourage you to do the same thing. I've never ran 7 days a week throughout any of my running journey, and I would encourage you to use a rest day and see what it can do for you, because just it really helps me not get burnt out when I'm in one of these big preps. On these rest days, you should be doing some stretching and mobility. Not necessarily just on rest days, but throughout the week to help stay loose and combat any injuries that you might be having. Generally, if you have any leg injuries, it is likely due to tight muscles or something stiff. And if you can just work in some mobility a few times a week, even if it's just a few minutes before bed, it can be a game changer when it comes to injury prevention. You can also incorporate some recovery tools if you have access to them: compression boots, massage guns, ice baths, saunas, etc. Really anything that you've seen on social media before that people are using for recovery. If you have access to them, then by all means, just use them, and know that they're not going to cure everything, but they can definitely be of assistance to you when you're trying to get recovered for another day of training. So I like to use some compression boots. Normatec boots are super expensive, and I have a cheaper version. I think they're called Sharper Image. Lily got them for me for Christmas, and to be honest with you, I think they do the same thing Normatec does. I don't know what the difference is. I've used Normatecs before in a Restore. They have, I don't know if you ever heard of Restore, but Restore is a company that they have saunas, they have cryotherapy, they have compression therapy, IV drips, and there's one pretty local to us, so I've utilized them before for some different things, cryo specifically and sauna. But they also have Normatecs there, and I've used their Normatec boots before, and to be honest, they do the same thing that the Sharper Images do, and the Sharper Images are just significantly less expensive. So if you're in the market for some compression boots, check them out. In addition to all of this, recovery is highly affected by your diet and eating habits. So it's important on these recovery days that we do not restrict calories. Now, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier of how runners are underfueled. Many times we think that because we're not working out, we don't need to eat as many calories. We're not burning hardly any calories for the day because we're taking it easy, but our body still needs fuel. We need at least 2,000 calories, depending on who you are, at least 2,000 just to function a day. That's what we're burning just being alive at the bare minimum. So we need to be getting in at least that. But specifically, if you're an athlete, you should be getting more than that in, even on your rest days. And I used to fall victim to this too. Like I said, I came from a background of trying to lose weight and just be fitter. And I kind of fall victim to this every once in a while where I'm not eating as much as I should be on rest days. So make sure you're eating enough on rest days. Make sure you're still eating enough protein and enough carbohydrates. Remember, you have another week of training coming up. At least in my case, when I was taking Sundays off, Mondays were right back into it. So I need to be fueling my body for Monday's workout the day before. But I would just make sure I'd still hitting my protein goals, still hitting my carb goals, and still hitting around 3,000 calories, even though we weren't working out. And it's super important that you keep your diet whole foods, and you don't want to be causing inflammation. If you're eating too much processed food, it can cause inflammation in the body. And when we're talking about recovery and staying primed for training, we do not want to have any unwanted inflammation in the body. So sticking to a pretty much whole food diet for the majority of the week is what I recommend. Just eat the same clean diet you do any other day on your rest days, and you're going to be in a pretty good spot. It's just super crucial to take recovery seriously if you want to push harder in your training and get those gains that you're looking for. And it's definitely something that I don't take lightly, and neither should you. So these are some of the things that I did to go from a 3:26 marathon to a 3:10 marathon. I did this in the span of about 10 months, but I also did some other race preps in there. I was doing some ultras and things like that. So I shaved 16 minutes off my marathon PR. I was super excited to hit that 3:10 in Austin. And I believe if you incorporate these 6 things I talked about, it's going to help you PR your next race and just get that new goal in your head. Get that new goal in your head and go hit that PR. And please incorporate some of these tools that I talked about. Another thing that I didn't mention as one of the 6 things, but I think is super important, is just overall consistency. So you just have to put the work in. And if it's your first marathon, don't set a time goal. Just put in the work and show up on race day fitter than you've ever been, healthier than you've ever been, and just go put out an effort and see where you're at. Use it as a baseline. And then when you go to a marathon and you learn about what they're all about and the different things, then we can kind of work back into our next prep and see what kind of time we can run. And it'll give us a better idea what paces we think we should be aiming to hit. So consistency, if you want to add a 7th factor, it's consistency. You have to put the work in every day, and this doesn't just apply to running. It applies to anything in your life that you're trying to achieve. Just be consistent, and you're going to find success eventually. For those of you that don't know, we are currently working on Project 100. I got into the Leadville 100 trail race this year, and we're currently in prep for that. And I got in with a charity spot with Live Strong. So we're raising money for those who have been affected by cancer and to support cancer research. And I'm dedicating this race and fundraising effort in honor of my grandfather, Don Foltz Sr., who passed away from cancer in 2003. He was an avid runner and served in the Navy for 4 years, and I'm really excited to run this race in his honor and just do this race, which has been my goal race to do since I started running, for a greater purpose than just myself. So I'm super excited for this. Like I said, I'm raising money for Live Strong. So if you want to help us out in that fundraiser, I will link our fundraising page in the show notes. And when you do go over and donate, please let us know in a comment when you donate who you would like to honor with your donation. We are looking for 100 different donors to honor somebody with their donation, so we can honor 100 different people who have battled cancer. We want to honor them with a mile in the race. So 100 people honored to represent the 100 miles of the race. So that's our goal with Project 100, and I hope you will take some time to head over there and check out our fundraising page. And I appreciate it if you donate. We can't do this without you, and we just want to make a difference and shed some light on those who have battled cancer. Whether they won or lost, we want to honor their fight. So please help us do that. And that's pretty much going to wrap up the episode. I just want to thank you all for sticking with us and giving this episode a listen. Like I said earlier, please be sure to leave us a rating and review, as it really helps us out and gets our name out there. I'm Hunter Foltz, and we will see you in the next episode.